Environmental groups have secured two landmark victories against some of the world's largest oil firms. On Wednesday, a Dutch court ordered Shell to drastically reduce its carbon emissions over the next decade. And activists in the US have won seats on the board of Texan oil giant Exxon Mobil, which will put pressure on the company to increase investments in renewable energy. Claudia Wyatt reports.
Jubilation from activists after a Dutch court ruling which could have far-reaching implications in the fight against climate change. Friends of the Earth and several other environmental groups took Royal Dutch Shell to court, saying it needs to take responsibility for its carbon dioxide emissions. The judges agree.
The court orders Royal Dutch Shell, via its concern policy of Shell Group, to reduce its carbon dioxide output and those of its suppliers and buyers by the end of 2030 by a net of 45% based on 2019 levels.
Friends of the Earth say Shell is one of the top 10 polluters worldwide. And while publicly supporting the Paris Climate Agreement, it continues to explore new oil and gas fields. The multinational spends billions on fossil fuel production, and activists suspect just 4% of its investments go towards renewable energy.
For the first time in history, a judge has ordered a large polluter to reduce its CO2 and reduce its contribution to dangerous climate change. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. This will change the whole. For the first time, I have hope that we will manage to address climate change. I'm happy for myself, for my 3 kids, for all of the children in the world, for the planet.
Shell has responded to the legal action, saying it agrees that addressing the climate crisis requires a collaborative global approach, but that court action will not accelerate the world's transition away from fossil fuels. Meanwhile, activists have scored a separate victory against another oil giant. A tiny hedge fund has won shareholder support for at least 2 seats on Exxon Mobil's board. Engine number 1 has a 0.02% stake in the oil company and has been rallying management to speed up efforts to reduce its carbon footprint. Environmentalists say energy companies around the world have a so-called duty of care when it comes to oil spills and other non-deliberate acts of pollution. Courts in both the Netherlands and the UK, where Shell has headquarters, have ruled it should be liable for environmental damage caused by oil leaks in Nigeria. Worldwide, there are about 1,700 climate change cases before the courts, mostly targeting governments and big business. Activists are optimistic they can get more of the world's dirtiest enterprises to clean up their acts. Claudia Wyatt, TRT World.
For more on this, we spoke to Donald Pauls, who is a director of the Friends of the Earth Netherlands. He explained how this court decision may inspire further attempts to combat climate change.
The implications are enormous. To start off with Shell, this is the first big polluter that is forced by a court of law to reduce its CO2 emissions substantively. And it's an example, a legal precedent that my organization will use to address and hold Dutch corporates to account. So we're going to use this to maybe have similar court cases against the other Dutch major polluters. And you can expect that throughout the world, civil society organizations will launch similar cases against other large polluters. I think what you're addressing now is probably one of the major issues on climate action and policy. It's the need to focus on where the real changes can be made. For too long, climate NGOs have focused on the individual, on consumer behavior, on changing your normal lights to LED lights, on driving less, etc. And the general public do not believe that that will really result in change. And they're rightly so, because it's a global problem that we will not change by individual behavior. And what this shows is that it's really possible to make a major change. Only 25 companies, amongst others Shell, cause half of all climate pollution globally. And they have been sidelined. They've been outside of climate policy forever, and at least since the Paris Climate Accord. And you can imagine if you leave out half of all pollutions in a global system to address climate change, that's not going to work. And what we have done is now brought a multinational responsible for 9 times as many greenhouse gas pollution as the Netherlands into a national climate policy. And this will really make a difference. I've been working on climate change for 20 years. For the first time, I believe we're going to manage to address the climate challenge.